recorded. All right, recording has started. Welcome to our FireNet Flow Friday. Today we have a highlight of a dispatch use case. We also will have some special guests on with us today. We'll have Sufian, our FireNet tech lead, and we have Amanda, who's going to be our special guest, walking us through two different dispatch use cases. Here's my disclaimer that I've been putting on all of my training since my dog momship has changed by 2 dogs. If there's any disruption, I apologize in advance. If the UPS or FedEx guy comes, it's out of my control. All right, overview. So general overview, we're going to look at what flows are and what they do, how they're being used. We're going to look at licensing for some different flow features. We're going to talk about security-enabled groups, how to build a flow. The 2 examples Amanda's going to go over are prescribed fire notification and a BCD flow review. We're going to look at how to check if a flow is working and then troubleshoot from there. Different ways you can dig into a flow to just give you a general idea how you can fix a flow if things don't go smoothly, which with flows, that's very often the case. Flows are pretty difficult technically. So you really have to dig into them if they don't work. And then we're going to talk about how to transition flow ownership. So we've been working with, in the dispatch space, a few of the super users that have let me identify them here. So Hannah, Kim, and Amanda are more of our super users in the flow space. So they're pretty versed in it, more versed than I am personally, for example. So there's some really neat things that these centers are doing. They are part and representatives to a national technical committee under the dispatch/GAC space. So looking to share more ideas with our users of this audience. So those are some resources that you could reach out to for more information. So licensing, the demonstrations today do have a special Power App license. So this is a license that one person per center can have. So if you identify somebody in your center that is the person that's going to manage your flows, then one person per center, that's how many we have of these premium licenses, can be set up with the license. If you're just getting started, it's not necessarily needed as well. So I just put it on those 2 of our super users there, but they have like 15, 20 flows. So there's a lot of things that are being done even without this premium license. So don't feel like you have it to get started. We are looking at the National Dispatch Technical Team that I mentioned, looking at some standards and templates. So today is really a demonstration of what some dispatch centers are doing, but we are looking to, moving forward, kind of get some standards coming down. So that's something that on the support end, one, there'd be some additional resources to assist. And then also on the FireNet end, if it's a national standard, we would also be prepared to assist there. So security-enabled groups, these are something that you probably haven't heard about much on the FireNet end. We came up with these to start transitioning flows from dispatch center main account ownership. So as you all know, the main center account is being changed over to a shared inbox. So if OneDrive, forms, and flows were built out of that main account, we now need to transition them over to a different manager and that information over to the Microsoft Teams /SharePoint shared space. So these security-enabled groups may not have been created for you depending where you are in the transition. So our centers that have transitioned, a lot of them don't actually have flows. We're just trying to start to now, we're working on any southern area centers that aren't super active right now, if they could transition over before they are active. So we have run into folks with flows now that we're working on transitioning. There've been a few folks that were proactive and being transitioned, so they also have that security enabled group. What this does as well is if Amanda's managing a flow, for example, and then she transitions dispatch centers, it doesn't just leave the flow built under her account and now nobody can access it. Essentially, the security group should be added to any flow that's built moving forward. So if you're building new flows, then you want to reach out to FireNet support and say, hey, Sufyan, can I get my security enabled flow group set up? This group, you would identify who is a member of it. By default, we're setting up stewards as a member. But if you reach out and ask for it to be set up, you can let us know who you want to have access to that group. And what it does is, so if Sufyan, myself, and Amanda are all in a security enabled flow group, when it's added to a flow, we now get access to it. And I'll show you where you can see flows that are shared with you in a second. But security enabled groups, you might have more questions. We'll try to kind of run through the presentation and then we'll circle back to answer any questions. So wording wise, we say flows. So I think it might have actually used to be called flows on the app level, but now it's Power Automate. So you actually have to go into Power Automate to access what we're calling flows. So essentially, everybody who was invited to this training has a FireNet account. So to access Power Automate, there's no guest access there. You would need a FireNet account. So I go to my Chrome browser, I go to office.com, I sign in, and then over here on my apps, I'm going to go to Power Automate. And this is where I'm going to find my flows. So here I am in the flow space. So my flows, this is basically where any flows that are shared with me. So if I'm part of a security group that gets added to a flow, I'm going to see it. So some of these in here have been shared with me. So here's like the BCD auto email flow, travel form. So there's a bunch of different flows in here that I didn't build, but they're shared with me. So essentially I could like make a copy, update the information, and move forward from there. So that's one thing in the flow space. And then we have templates. So these are templates that are built for you. So if you can find one that does exactly what you want it to do, it's actually built out for you. And you just have to kind of plug and play and update the information. That's also our goal for how we're going to manage any standards that come down for flows for the dispatch space, that, we would have similar template that you could just plug in your own information. I would say building it is probably the most challenging part, and then troubleshooting if it doesn't work. So part of that would be done for you. All right, I am going to hand it over to Amanda to walk you through a demonstration. Are there any questions up until this point? If you want to just throw it in chat, and I can also answer them as Amanda's running through her stuff. Okay, Amanda, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you. So I do have a little bit of stuff from this slideshow, so I may mess this up, but let me try. See if I can not mess it up too badly. Get to my.
The screen size looks good.
Oh, good. Yeah, that was an issue earlier. Okay, so the main things that I'm going to talk about are we have a planned prescribed fire form that we have asked. First of all, I'm Amanda Hammond. I'm the logistics coordinator for the Eastern Area Coordination Center. I think some of you may know me or have worked with me. And so the first thing I'm going to show you is a pretty simple form that we created because some of the people at the GAC level, like our predictive services, our fuels, fire behavior analyst, wanted to get like a 2 to 3 week heads up on if people were looking at burning, thinking about burning within the GAC, so they could start to get ahead of the curve on, you know, what that looked like for them, having a window to do that, that sort of thing. So we created a form for them to submit so we could get that information. That's a form that they fill out in Microsoft Form, and then it populates a Word template and then sends an email with a Word document. So I'm going to actually populate the form, go through the form, hopefully, if all goes well, show you the email that it generates and the document that it generates, and then kind of show you a little bit of what happens behind the screen to make that happen. And then another flow that we have is for BCD travel. So anyone who's done Forest Service is familiar with BCD travel. BLM has something very similar. They have a very specific form that you gather information when you're sending someone to an incident. And I don't know why it was one of those things. I just dreaded sitting on the phone trying to capture the like specific spelling and birthday and all of that of the person who was traveling. And so we created a form, again, a Microsoft form that is sent to the traveler. They fill out all of their information. The form populates another template. We get an email so we can review the template, put our, the dispatcher information in as the point of contact, save it as a PDF, and then it automatically emails to BCD. So then they can call to confirm. So I'll give you a couple slides of the products of that. I can't run the flow for you because then BCD would be getting an email from us. But I wanted to give you kind of an overview of what that is and what it looks like. So like I said, the forms for our RX, they complete the form, populate the Word template, and an email is sent. So pretty simple. Now I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and please, please, please let me know if you can't see my screen very well. I tried to blow it up so that it would be easy for everyone to see.
Looks good.
Perfect. Okay, so we're just gonna dummy some stuff up. I'm gonna call this the Flow Friday RX. I will say this is soda. I don't think they're doing anything. Sorry about my super loud keyboard.
It's not picking up your loud typing today, Amanda.
Oh, good, good, good. Sometimes it really does. This is where I fall back to my like Western world. This part not really doesn't matter. None of this is at all accurate, but that's fine. That's not the important part. Acres. So we said 2 or 3 weeks out, so maybe the 28th through the 31st. Gosh, I don't even know. One of the weather services around here. That west into 20. Okay, and so if I say yes on aerial ignition, it pops out and says, what are you going to use there? So we can capture that. If I say no, then of course those questions don't come up. So we'll go with no. And we'll just do same. And then we hit submit. So it's a pretty simple form, much simpler if you know a whole lot about what's actually going on with the burn. Now, with any luck, it will pop in to our shared email fairly quickly. This is where the magic of flows and trying to do them live comes in, right, guys?
It all comes with a disclaimer, no promises.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a minute to think. And while it's thinking, I'll pop over here, and this is our SharePoint site. And this is where the files end up going and being saved, right? So I can look in here, and it was saved correctly in the folder. So that's good. That piece happened. This is the template that I created. So this is what gets populated from that form. Let's see if it's coming yet. Oh, I wonder if it is getting pushed somewhere else. That just occurred to me that Intel me. Oh, there we go. There it is. I forgot that Intel was having it sent to a folder. So, so this is the email that it generates. The planned RX. It populates the name of the RX as well as the date that is planned to start. So it populates that in the subject line. It attaches the document and says, planned RX notification form has been submitted, please review, and then gives the file path of where it can be found in the SharePoint drive. So if someone wants to be able to go find it, they can do that. And so if I open here, you can see the document that was populated from my form. And that's the Word template that I had showed you that was created, and then all of the form stuff just dropped in there. Does anyone have any questions about that? Kind of that piece and what it looks like. Perfect. So
you're going to show under the hood now, Amanda, and the workings on behind that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's the magic of what we get, and it's like you saw, it's super simple. Someone fills out a form, and boom, here it is. So then here is the flow that was created for that. So edit.
This is simple for Amanda, but if it takes you all week, to do your own, don't feel bad.
Yeah. So our trigger, the trigger is the initial thing that happens to start your flow. And for this one, the trigger is that a new response is submitted to a form. And so with all of these, as you click them, it kind of, bumps it out and gives you more information on the things below it. This has form ID. Lots of times when you're doing this, you'll have a drop down and it'll be like, here's the forms you've created. You can pick one. But sometimes it doesn't, and you need to use a unique form ID. I just want to show you really quick how you can find that, because if you haven't had to, it's kind of weird. This is just my form, in forms where it's created, not where you collect responses. And if you look up in this enormous line of, and you come over, there's a spot that says design and ID equals. And if you start after that equal and copy all of that, that is your form ID that goes into your flow if you have to use a unique form ID because it's not populating from the drop down. So pro tip if it's not showing up and you need it to. So you pick your form ID. When something's submitted to that form, you're going to start your flow. And of course, the very first thing you're going to want to do is get the responses, get the information back from that response. So again, form ID, and then the response ID. Usually, when you click on these, you start to get add dynamic content, and this is where things start to show up that you could just pick, which is really nice. Then we populate a Microsoft Word template. So I had shown you that template that I created, right? This template right here. It doesn't have any information in it, but these are created as fields with kind of like RX name, unit ID. So it's created with those template fields. And so that is how, when I go to populate my Microsoft Word template, that's where it gets this information, is those little typed in identifier fields in my template. And then over here, these are all from my form. These are all of the things that came in as responses from my form. And so I match them up. And so this is when you're planning a flow or something like that, and you're planning to populate a template, creating a template that you want to populate from a form, any sort of stuff that you're doing like that. You don't want to be like cutesy with abbreviations or cryptic in what things are in any of your naming conventions, because at some point you're going to have to come back in here and be like, okay, RX name equals RX name. National Weather Service Office equals relevant National Weather Service Office. And you're going to have to match those things up so that they populate your template correctly. Does that make sense?
Yep.
No one's screaming. Okay, I'm going to push through. I'm going to push through. And Tara, let me know if there's any hands raised or anything.
Yeah.
So we've populated our template with that response that we just pulled from our form that our FMO or fuels guy submitted. Now we're creating a file, and we decide where it's going to be saved on our SharePoint. And what the folder path is. And again, this is all kind of like drop downs and connected to your FireNet account and the sites that you have access to. So these are all different sites and things that I have access to. So, pick and choose from that. So again, file name, it's that dynamic content. That's how I was able to do RX name and today's date for the file name. That's how I want it saved, as today's date and the name of the prescribed fire. And then file content is just the body of that Microsoft Word template. Cool, super easy. And then we're just sending an email notification. So in here, we put whomever we want to get the notification. Subject, I typed in planned RX, and then again, that dynamic content, you can choose any of the fields that exist in your folder. In your form. So again, I went with RX name and planned ignition date. And then I typed in the, thing about the form and the route address, but then I'm able to put in path to take it to the exact file to get to that actual form. And that's how you make that super easy, fill out a form, get an email.
Sufyan, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I had a question actually. So in your final step there, how did you actually add the attachment to this email body?
Oh, wait. In the advanced, sorry. So yeah, put the advanced options and then you can choose attachment to add the body and attachment file name and just pick like the name. Sorry. And that's the attachment. Just that spot, that step. So yeah, any other questions on that one? And that one really, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, just a reminder that this is recorded. So if you want to go back slowly and like step by step, you know, set something up, we could definitely some type of documentation to help walk you through as we start to make things more of an actual standard that we're recommending. You know, we'll have a lot more guidance. We had talked about, you know, some of the steps that Amanda has identified here, like, you know, even if it's a template one and just highlighting where you need to pull in your own information. So where you need to link it to your form, to your SharePoint, to an inbox. So just what fields need to be updated for your own center and setup.
So that's kind of the end just for the planned prescribed fire form. And so I'm gonna, jump back maybe if I can to the PowerPoint for a minute. And I am, yes, I'd like to resume from slide 9. Perfect. Okay. So now the BCD travel form flow. This one's a bit more complicated, and I actually ended up having to build 2 flows that we're trying to combine into one. Sufyan's helping me on that, but haven't quite got there yet. So the overall,
I say sit back and enjoy the ride on this one. Sip your coffee. Don't feel super pressured to understand it all, but just get an idea of the cool things that you can do.
For sure. And yeah. So generally, the traveler fills out the form. The Word template is populated and emailed to the shared inbox, just like happened with the prescribed fire form. The dispatcher reviews the Word document version of the form, puts in the information of, hey, I, Amanda Hammond, am the dispatcher point of contact. Here's my phone number for BCD, because they don't go direct to the traveler. They work through a dispatcher. And then we save it as a PDF in SharePoint. At that point, once it's saved as a PDF, it gets emailed directly to BCD with a CC to our shared email. So I'm going to show you the form really quickly, and then I will come back. I'm trying to decide what's the best way to do this, bouncing between the things. Okay, I'll show you the form, just the travel request form. You can see it really quick.
I'm happy to share the PowerPoint too, if that at all makes sense for you, Amanda.
That's okay. I think it's working okay so far.
Okay, awesome.
So this is just our travel request form, right? It's the really basic information. And like I said, a link to this gets sent to every person who needs travel, like commercial travel. Incident name, number, where are they headed, P code, departure date, arrival. Do they need a car rental? Yes or no? How many days? And of course, when they're actually answering this, If they click yes, then they get this piece to answer. If they click no, then, you know, they don't get the information about vehicle size and rental days. And then if they fill out their information on who they are, first name, middle name, last name, gender, because they still require that, birth date, departure city, email address, so we have that information, as well as their cell phone. Are there additional travelers? So I set this up so that if someone needed to arrange travel for multiple people going to, you know, flying together, they could. And so if they say yes, then they get second traveler, third traveler, fourth traveler. I think I built it out to like, I don't know, 8 travelers or however many lines were on the BCD travel form that they could fill out. So it's, again, a really simple form. It's easy for people to fill out. So that's pretty nice. Now, again, here is the template. Ooh, she's grinding, thinking it looks okay. Sometimes when I open them in the browser, it looks really funky. So we'll see if this, yeah, this is all funky. It's a template of the BCD travel request. We won't get caught up on trying to see it because it's being cranky. Another thing that's really important is this travel requests is set up as a library, and the libraries can have unique permissions. So because information is being sent here of people's like personal information, you can set unique permissions so only specific people can get into it instead of everyone who's a member of your SharePoint. So I know that's one thing that's come up before when I've talked about this is, yeah, but now you're generating files with people's PII. Well, it's fine because you can create unique permissions and really limit the amount of people who can actually access this travel request library. So we filled that out. Now I'm going to bounce back to the PowerPoint because I have a couple examples of what you get after it's filled out. I didn't, like I said, want to show it real time because it would end up sending something to BCD. I probably wouldn't appreciate that. Okay. So the travelers filled out the form. And this is what we get in our shared email. So like our WI EACC at FireNet email. And you can see that it's got a lot of information already populated. The, you know, dispatch center, the incident name, where they're headed, incident resource order, departure date and time. This is one I had done last year when I was messing with it and trying to build the flow correctly. Car rental, great. Economy, 14 days. Here's their information specifically. You'll notice that there's no information in POC Travel Arranger or POC email address or over in the phone number for the POC. That is the information that when we get it initially in our email, if I'm the travel arranger, the logistics coordinator, I fill that out. And then I save it as a PDF in our SharePoint in a specific folder. And when I save as PDF, this is what's generated to go to BCD. So now it's got my, my name, my email address. On this one, I hadn't put my phone number in because I was just messing around with it. But this gets sent to both the BCD email, so this email down here at the bottom, the one down there at the bottom, as well as to the WIEACC email. Also, when we get that first initial email within the body, it gives us that phone number and email address of the person who's submitting it that they filled out on the form. So if we have any questions, it's right there for us to go to give them a call and get that information from them. So yeah, that goes directly to BCD and to us, so we know that the flow has executed correctly, because we get the PDF as kind of a double check in our email. And then we get a call from BCD in like 5 or 10 minutes on a good day. So it is really pretty hands-off, pretty great, because there's only a few things that we actually have to fill out from our side. And you don't have those problems of mishearing, how someone spelled their name or something like that. It's incumbent on the person filling it out to put their information in correctly. And then this is the template that I was having trouble opening. And so you can see, like, Traveler 1, Traveler 2, Traveler 3, and all of that information. That's all stuff that when you go into the flow, all of those fields have to be created in the template so it can be pulled in to the flow. So does anyone want to see what the flow for this looks like? I lost anyone yet?
Nope, there's a round of applause coming in now.
Got a couple people. Okay.
Virtual applause.
Okay. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so we start, like I said, I had to create 2 different flows to make this work, unfortunately. So we start with this one. And it looks very similar to the last one, right? New response, you get the details, you populate the Microsoft Word template. Now, it's like a lot of stuff to match up. Oh yeah, I did 10 travelers. So that does take a lot of time to match the fields from the form to the fields in your template, and to make that all work. That took for freaking ever. And then we created the file, much like before, folder path, file name, first name, last name, departure date, body, and send an email notification. So this one goes to just our shared email, and it just says new BCD travel request. As soon as we see that, we know have something in. New travel request has been submitted, review for accuracy. And so this is the stuff that shows up in our email. Primary traveler name, and then it pulls from the form, first name, last name, their cell number, and their email. And again, I have it set up so it gives you the path to the form that was generated in case you need to go direct to that. Attached, the body, attachment file is the name. So it's not too terribly different or too terribly complicated from the other one. It just takes a lot longer when you have a lot more fields to match up and to make work for populating that template. And then after that one is done and oops, got quick Abby, and created, then I have a second flow that when a file is created, so this is when I do that save as PDF, and I save it in our SharePoint. And so I designate the specific spot that it's created and the library name, travel requests, and the folder, which I update each year for the appropriate year. So whenever any file is created in there, it gets the file metadata. It took me a lot of Googling and YouTubing to figure that part out. And then after that, it gets the file content. And then it sends an email. And it sends the email with the attached PDF to BCD travel with the subject travel request. Please see attached. Thank you with our information. And then in here, I was able to say who was sending it. And then the information on the attachments and who the reply to was, and to mark it as high importance. So that took me some doing to figure out, but I did eventually. So that's kind of the two things that I had to create to make it work. But now that it works, it really is super seamless. And I have to update the file path each year, just for my organization peace of mind, and how I split it out. But otherwise, it's been really pretty seamless. And the few people that we've had come in on assignments and stuff have seemed to like it and thought it worked pretty well. So that is all I have, and that was a lot. So I hope I didn't take too long. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to you, Tara.
Thanks, Amanda. And please don't be overwhelmed. I'm like, Amanda has to be really smart to have figured all this out. But we're hoping to find a way that we can share, something like that Amanda built, and how other users could take advantage of it just by plugging in their own information. So that's really our end goal. If there's no questions coming in right away, I want to keep going, and we are still open for questions as we go, and Amanda's still with us. I just want to look at flow troubleshooting and hand it over to Sufian. Amanda kind of showed us her flow working, but connections and how to troubleshoot. Sufian, I can hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Let me see if I can share my screen from here.
All right, we see your flow.
All right, so this is actually the flow that Amanda ran, and I wanted to show where you would actually start troubleshooting. So as you can see here under the 28-day run history, you can see that this flow succeeded. If it hadn't succeeded, it would have said failed. So let me actually show you what this looks like since it has succeeded, just so we can walk through the steps that Amanda had outlined. So you can see here the first step was to get the response. And if you open this up, it's going to tell you that it was able to actually get the response from this form ID. And then if we click on the next one, now we're trying to get the response from this form. And it'll show you the outputs. So these were the fields that it was able to retrieve from that form. And then it gives you a little bit of the coded form of what it actually was able to retrieve. And from there, it went to this step over here populate a Word document template, which it did. Again, basically the same stuff in the form. Again, some more programming. And then it took this and it created a file. So it created a file to this site ID over here inside this folder, and it created this file name. And then it took this information and it sent an email out to WIEAC with this subject and this body. And it was able to attach that Word document and send it out. So that's what it looks like when the flow actually succeeds. Let me see if I can find a flow that didn't succeed.
Those little green check marks are your friend.
Yes. Here we go. So these are all the failed attempts from somebody that I know. And you can see here, all these steps actually succeeded. It was just the last part here. It wasn't able to create an item. And if you go to the error details on the side here, it said that this user could not be found. So this is more of a user error where somebody put in an incorrect email address.
With somebody be me?
So this would be the first step to figuring out where the flow failed. And if you look at the error details, they give you more information. One of the reasons the flow could fail besides user error, it could be that whoever has ownership of the flow doesn't have the correct permission. So if it's like pulling from a SharePoint site that the flow builder actually doesn't have access to or never actually had the permission to, it's going to fail there. And another reason why a flow could fail is if the connections haven't been set up properly. So if you go to, let me go back to a flow here. On this side over here, you can see all the connections it's using. So this is my flow with my form that I created. So since I created it as my flow, it should have my email address here. And it should have green check mark saying that it's connected. The other thing you want to check for, the other place where you want to check for connections is in the actual each steps. You click on these dots here and check my connections over here and make sure it's actually connected to your named account. Each one of these is going to have the connections set up. And let me see here. There was one more template
gosh,
I wanted to show.
You got a crazy clicker like you, Lisa.
Yeah, there's one more flow I wanted to show. I don't remember where I put it.
Which mail is that one connecting to, Sufyan? Because it doesn't say your named account anymore.
Oh, this one here?
Mm-hmm.
Let me take a look. Just connected to mail. It's interesting. Yeah, it should have my email address here.
Maybe that's why it's
yeah. Oh yeah, see, this was like a test one that I was making. This is actually the wrong step that I was using. Should be Outlook.
I have one more thing to cover, Sufyan, if you want to look for that other one you wanted to show.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. I'll stop sharing.
I'm just going to share back with you my entire screen here. One thing, Sufyan, one of the users mentioned was the flow owner will also get an email notification if the flow fails. I guess the flows that I've run are flows that are shared with me, but I don't own, so I can run it. But I don't, I wait and see if it failed, because I guess I'm not the owner on those. They're just shared with me and I can run them even though I'm connected to them. But I don't get an email notification. Do you get an email notification when all of your test ones fail, Sufian?
Yeah, I do, since I'm the flow owner.
Okay, got it. So thanks, James, for that. And then Jennifer, can we find notes or cheat sheet on how to create flows within FireNet? We don't really have any yet. There is, for the finance use case, has a cheat sheet designed. And then we have a sheet for how to transition flows off the main account, but otherwise it's kind of, it's a tool that's out there, but not fully supported by us yet. If a national, like a national standard comes down for a certain form, then there'd be a cheat sheet for that. But otherwise, we have the quick help trainings where you can go in and look for Power Automate, and kind of just online. So right now, besides the video, that's the guidance that we have. So for transitioning flows, this is an important one that I just want to mention. If you haven't transitioned yet, you can go to our website and find the reminder of what you want to make sure. And basically 3 things. You don't want anything on your OneDrive at this point, for sure. So anything on OneDrive should be moved to Microsoft Teams/SharePoint, so your shared space there. And next up, any forms owned by the dispatch center, we want to move to group forms. So I just wanted to show you that live, because it can be a little bit confusing. So if you've built a form under like a named account or under the main dispatch center account, you want to transition those to your Microsoft Teams/SharePoint group. So essentially, all the dispatch centers have a Microsoft Teams/SharePoint by default, and that's the group you want to move it to. The user interface is not fabulous in forms. So here's a bunch of forms I have towards the top, and then I can see my groups down here. So if I find a form that, here's a test one. You can see on these that this one has my name. So this was my form. Opposed to these other ones, see, this one says FireNet support, FireNet support. So those ones are group forms. So it's not like super clear, but say you're my main dispatch center steward and you set up a flow under the main account, but now you have to transition because we're close. Those are going to be shared inboxes. So what I do is I click on the 3 dots here and I say move. And then I'm going to find the teams that I'm part of. I'll find the group associated with it here, and I'll just move it there. So when I do that, that also changes for my more advanced flow folks. That also changes what the flow is going to be calling as far as the form goes. So when you're building all this under your own named account, there's like a drop down when you choose form, and then you can select the form. Once you move it to group forms, you're now going to need that form ID that Amanda and Sufian showed. So if I open one of my group forms here, you'll see up in the top I had, so here's ID, and then all this is what needs to be cut and pasted into that section in your flow. So on the website, we do have a document here that will walk you through the steps on how to transition your forms and your flows. So mostly this document is how to transition your flows, but a lot of our users have forms tied to their flows. So this just shows you that form ID that I just mentioned. That was as we were working on transitioning Amanda's off of her main account or the center's main account. This was one thing that she had figured out already about capturing the form ID. So that is a not super obvious one. So we just really want to call that out because that's really important. And then your connectors that Sufian looked at. So if an account is under, if a flow is built under the main account,
these connections are going to say the main account's email address. And that's what we want to update to one person. So you'll have one person in your center managing the flow essentially. So I'd want to update the connections to my own account if I'm the one managing the flow. And then I'll also want to add this security enabled group. This then will again give everybody access. So if Lisa and Sufjan are in my dispatch center and they're managing flows with me, then I want, or they're helping me with flows and they need to be able to access it, they'll be part of this group. So then they'll find the flow under their shared with me flows. So you want to add that to any flow that you're building. Even if you're manager, you want to add this security enabled group to your flow. So this is a document that we have out there talking about connections and then testing. And that's all. I will paste the link to that page. So if you haven't been called out as needing to update, you can start to visit that now, because we're reaching out to folks, checking if everything's moved, and then that main account's being toggled over. Question, what do you do when you go to move the form, but when you click move, it doesn't show up in the destination options? You can reach out to FireNet support and just send us a screenshot of what you see when that's not showing up as your options. I think there might be like a small, let me just check one here. There's like a hidden kind of, let's see. Oops. Okay. So move. So sometimes if it doesn't, this screen is showing me all of mine, but once in a while I have seen a over on the like on the bottom where it says to like, it actually lets you search for more. So if you don't see that and you're not finding it, you just want to also make sure that the account that you're under is a member of that Microsoft Teams / SharePoint. So you can reach out to FireNet support and we can help you there. So I'm seeing any team, so see all these incidents because I'm added to them. So I'm part of all these groups. So anything I'm added to should show up here. So just make sure you're a member of the Microsoft Teams SharePoint. We do have a standard naming convention, but some centers had, you know, if you already had one when Google transferred over, your naming might be a little bit different. Okay, very old team. We had to toggle. Oh, there is a, thank you, Lisa. So there were email support, and we can help you if we toggle the dispatch center account as a member and then back to owner, then it'll pick it up. So there's something funky after we migrated that old Microsoft Teams SharePoints. You kind of have to re-trigger the connection. So thank you so much, Lisa. We can email support and we can make that change on that Microsoft Teams SharePoint. What else do we have for questions? I feel like we should redo our question, our our survey now and see if our results change at all. Let's see if it'll, my presentation, Flow Fridays dispatch, present. So I'm gonna move this over here as we get ready to close out. And I can paste that link again. I don't know if it'll let you fill it out again. Is this gonna change it all? Oh, no. Was that an after the presentation? So I'll post the link again if you want. How do you feel about using flows after your presentation? I'll post the link in case you jumped on late. We did have probably the scariest Microsoft app, but go up by 1. Hopefully we see that pink bar go up a little bit. But we're here for you in FireNet support, and it's just kind of on the verge. It's something that's growing. So we wanted to give you an idea. One of the use cases today was a more simple setup, and another one was like super complex. But just to give you an idea what it can do on our internally on our team, we have a super smart person like Amanda, and he set up a flow that actually sets up our incident teams. So every channel, every folder, it's an automatic setup that happens from the back end. James, I feel like you should be one of our super users, maybe. You seem to know what's going on with flows. So they are awesome, a little bit scary, but we appreciate joining us today. And I mentioned the kind of the contacts for different GACs, and we're trying to grow that from a national standard level. So just keep an eye out for more information. And I appreciate joining me, Sufyan and Amanda, because a flow training isn't much of a training without my technical experts. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. So if you want anybody to jump